Mr. Teat? Absent. Mr. Kubarski?
Here.
Ms. Turney? Absent. We also have Mr. Johnson, the liaison, Mr. Forte, the attorney, and me, the staff liaison.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the zoning commission for last meeting, September 11th, 2024?
So moved.
Mr. Gabarski, second by Mr. Kopek. Any discussion, comments, corrections? I have none.
I guess it's appropriate at this point, since it was brought up in the meeting, and it's in the minutes, we'll probably discuss this afterwards, but it says that we're going to ignore the PUD zoning.
I guess maybe ignore would not be the proper
We're
word.
rezoning.
We weren't going to
Isn't
rezone PUDs and break them into, like, take it from a PUD and say R1 or PUD,
Right.
R4 or whatever.
Right.
We were just going to leave.
Leave
the
it as a PUD.
Yes,
Okay.
that was the intent. So I'm
Okay.
not sure if that
That's what,
conveys it.
that's why I understood this to mean,
Okay.
right? But it seems like all the documentation has everything being reassigned,
Well,
all the maps.
The Camaros ones
the
did, yeah.
Camaros maps did.
Okay.
That's what they were tackling.
And we're saying that that's just a reference, we're not
Correct.
doing anything about it.
Correct.
Okay,
But good clarification.
Yeah.
All right.
okay.
Having no corrections, additions, subtractions, can I get a voice vote? All those in favor to approve the minutes of September 11th, say aye. All opposed? Okay, motion carries to approve the minutes as submitted. Public comment. I'm seeing no public comment. No public here. All right, so move on to item number 5, the zoning map. And the first one is review of the open space and farmland preservation map. So just a good point that you bring up there. Yeah, I think, which was in the packet, is the Camaros map of, it was 2018 or 2023?
2022, I
2022,
believe. yeah.
Okay. So that was what a lot of, their working map,
Right.
which we've kind of like picked up and started running with, but have not adopted everything that they were
Okay.
choosing to do. One of the things which you just brought up was how to, they were trying to say, well, these aren't PUDs, let's make this R4 or R1 or whatever it is.
Right.
And we decided the whole idea of PUD was mixed, mixed use anyway, so it was just opening a big can of worms. So we're just gonna leave the
I
PUDs.
think it was largely to try to figure out what would be underlying zoning for any of that. And
Right.
So you have some guidelines too.
Right, whereas the
versus a sort
PUD
of
has-
vagueness
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was also, there was some land that was owned, it was suggested, that was public utility land that there was concern over. That it was public utility, but supposedly it wasn't maybe owned by the public utility. So I suggest look into that. I don't know, but it was a curious thing.
All right, zoning map, review the open space and farmland preservation map. I see we have an updated,
Right,
open
Mr.
space.
Johnson, Jerry gave me one correction. I think it's on there. It was in your packet. Ensure that I got it correct. And then you have, it looks like another correction.
Yes.
So we'll add that. That's just 1 or 2 parcels.
Right.
And, or maybe 3, depending on how it goes.
I think
Jerry, that's the
actually,
map underneath.
It's the map
Jerry,
underneath, Jerry,
sorry,
with-
yeah.
and I'm sorry, I stole your pencil, I didn't give it back to you.
I'll go get it. Okay, my hip is fine, I can walk.
Yeah. Yeah, how's the hip? Good? Good.
Is that correct?
Yeah, it was the cemetery that was in that. And then, I mean, open space goals. That's the village either.
Yeah, on the legend, it shows open space district. I don't think that's the right terminology we should use.
Okay, I think,
District has the connotation of like a park district,
okay,
and in the 25 years of our open space program, we've never included that verbiage.
okay,
So I think it should mirror what it's shown as, which is open space parks in open space too, so it's not just open space property.
Yeah, and that,
Just don't like the district part on that.
the district, okay.
Yeah, because like for us,
I guess,
maybe protected open space. I
Yeah.
love that word protected, just from the standpoint, it doesn't mean anything beyond that. You know, it's still open up to all sorts of different levels of, okay, this is protected by the township. This is
Easement.
protected by
yeah,
easements,
or,
that kind of
yeah.
thing.
Because this is the top layer, right? So this is just identifying the open space. This is just, and then obviously we talked about having sub-layers, which would then break out what is owned by the township, which is owned by the county, which is owned by easements or conservation foundation or whatever, you know? So is there a desire to change the verbiage? What was in the 2023? I'm just curious, the Camaros?
It was open space.
Just open space? Yeah, yeah. So-
Well, let's back up here. But the district, it's going to have to be called district, because the entire community is divided into zoning districts. That's the whole purpose of the zoning map. And this is one of those districts, it's like a commercial district,
Okay.
residential districts. It's going to be a district.
So it's
You know,
standard
whether-
verbiage?
Yeah, that's just,
Standard
that's it.
verbiage.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is,
Where, when you look at the forest preserve property?
Yeah.
So what does that fall?
the forest preserve is going to be zoned open space district. Or you can say open space, but it is a zoning district. That's the whole intent of a zoning ordinance, is that you have a text and you have a map, and the map shows areas or districts, you know, it's called district, you know, for 120 years
Right.
all across the United States. I mean,
Okay.
there's no other, I
All
don't
right.
think there's any other term.
Okay,
So what are the smaller properties on here?
The ones that are colored green?
Yeah, the smaller.
Some are HOA properties that have covenants on them, it's probably covenant ones.
And we're calling that open space district?
That will be part of the open space or protected, or whatever we decide on, open space, yeah. Because it is to remain essentially undeveloped because of the covenant.
so is there a preference, like, to call it, like, was suggestion was protected open space? It would be a protected open space district, but maybe the connotation I'm not trying to read your mind, Joe, but maybe you're getting the impression that it is a governing body that's in that district or something?
Well, I can tell you from, you know, just past experience, we live in a very complicated area. It's not identified clearly by anything. So you can, you know, live in the township and not in the village. The forest preserve property is different than the township open space property. The HOA properties are different. There's nature preserves that are within certain subdivisions. And, to me, it should be pretty clearly delineated of who's who here and how that falls out. So,
I believe that will be in the sublayers of this. I think this is the top layer for open space, which encompasses all of them. That's the goal, is to incorporate things that basically are, as you said, Jerry, protected in one way or another, protected by an easement, protected by the village, protected by the township, protected by the homeowners association, protected by the forest preserve.
well, I like the all-encompassing protected part.
Okay.
As opposed to open space on the top layer.
What if, instead of using the word district there, I mean, you have Campton Hills parcels, and these essentially are open space, protected open space parcels themselves, and we only have the one farmland parcel district up there.
Farmland preservation.
That word, you know, I mean, on the map itself, can you call that a parcel?
Guys,
I don't
I mean,
believe-
really, let's stop
Yeah.
right here. We spent like 3 months arguing. This is a very simple task. This is one zoning district that includes all types of land that is not supposed to be developed. It goes along with the table that has very limited special uses and permitted uses. We're making this much, much more, and we've been on this since July. This is what it should be, okay? It's a district, and it is one color on a map. We can have it, there's another map here that shows ownership, as I mentioned last time. We can have this as an appendix. We can have it in the comp plan. That is a zoning map. End of story on this. I'm not going to say anything more. End of story, okay? This is way too much, way too much. We have two districts, Farm Protection District, because that is the one that has the covenants and easements where that's gonna be protected as farmland. And the other stuff is meant to be protected from development, and that is the properties belonging to HOAs, which I did not originally want to put into, but then we went through 2 months of digging it out, and we hired an attorney to go look at this. We're already 15 minutes into this meeting. This should have taken about 1 minute. And I'm sorry to be mad, but I want to put a stop to this right now. I'm sorry.
You continue, and.
I'm done.
Okay, you're done now?
I'm done.
Okay. So,
I rest my case.
I can tell you from my 38 years of living here, that there are nuances to where we're at. And the terminology and the verbiage used is critically important. So I understand we have other maps. What we deem as open space is not Garfield Farm or the Forest Preserve or these nature preserves that are in the subdivisions. And the connotation is different than what the area is accustomed to. So we have an open space program that's got 1,600 acres of property that's different than the 200 acres of the Canton Forest Preserve and certainly different than in the subdivisions. So I'm going to take a very different approach than Jim of, I don't care how long it takes. We've talked about this, and we've just come through what I would call a difficult situation where Canton Township's open space program was not even thought of or mentioned by any of the local municipalities. So it's near and dear to my heart, I'm sure it is to Jerry, that if we're gonna work on this, the terminology should match up to what the residents are accustomed to.
Okay,
That's all.
all right, fine. Jim?
I think the whole concept here is that it's an overlay district, and we keep, avoiding that and getting this thing a lot more complicated than it is. An overlay district has parcels which are distributed throughout the village and are designated open space. That's as simple as it gets. And the district connotation has to be there because that's the legal description that everyone recognizes when it comes to zoning. So the district designation is not really, our choice. That's the way it's structured throughout the whole legal process.
That's correct. It has to be a district. I mean, you could have one residential parcel in the middle of an industrial, in the middle of a bunch of parcels that are all industrially zoned, and that one parcel is in a residential district. That's, the uses that are allowed underneath that district are what's important. And the ownership, I mean, zoning ordinance doesn't take anything into account as to ownership unless you had a specific use district for like a specific governmental use, like a library or a village hall or something like that. But creating an open space district, which not a lot of communities have, is to allow for all different types of owners of open space and properties that are not going to be developed to sit under that district. And the uses in the zoning ordinance for the open space district are what is important, so that we can delineate what specifically can and cannot be done on those properties. After the zoning ordinance is applied to the properties, then you might have even more controls through deed restrictions and protective covenants and all those other things. The zoning ordinance is not going to address that. But that's an additional layer of protection on top of what the zoning ordinance provides.
So when you read that, there's a separation between the farmland preservation and the open space districts, right?
Right.
So is the farmland protected?
Yeah, it's a separate
It's-
part of the zoning ordinance, too. It's
Right.
It's separate.
Right.
Protected, though, right?
Protected for that particular use.
Yeah.
So it's different than, an open space district or in some of the properties that either the township controls or other private entities. There are certain things that they've determined that they are going to allow on those properties. And so has the village if those properties are zoned open space. Farmland allows, and correct me if I'm wrong, allows those properties to continue to be farmed and designates it that they want them to continue to be farmed. So, you know, the village has recognized that, you know, it seems like they've recognized it for quite a while. I believe even the county recognizes farmland protection.
Well, that's.
As a-
that
as a
is
zoning
part
district.
of- That is the
Right.
program, that is their
Right.
program, their first
Right.
one of that program.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the verbiage as far as district, I mean, if you look in the zoning ordinance, and really all zoning ordinances, it'll say residential district, residential use district, commercial district, industrial district, in this case, open space district. The district just means, you know, that's the zoning designation. You could substitute the word designation for district. It means the same thing. That's the purpose. of the
Right, and you know, what we'll say, and we can add, this is just like it's not the zoning map, but the zoning map will say, we'll have the legend will say zoning district. So it'll be clear that these are districts that pertain to zoning. I mean, it will say zoning.
Right,
So
exactly.
I don't see how there's gonna be any confusion, so.
You know, some communities are set up where all the commercial's right here and all the residential's over here, and it's very neatly done. You know, in most communities, it's not. So yes, a property that's zoned residential district versus commercial, industrial, they might be right next to each other. You have to have that delineation in the zoning code. So that the term just means the classification.
Yep. So in Article 5, where it says establishment and purposes of zoning districts, you're saying that you can either insert designation or in place of districts designation?
Well, I mean, that's what it means. It means designation, right? But district is the generally accepted term that, I mean, I've never seen it used
Right, and
anywhere
this,
else.
and
Or anything
the
else.
state statute, the enabling legislation for zoning in Illinois, I'm about 100% positive, says a community, municipality, local government can divide their area into zoning districts. It uses districts. The enabling legislation uses districts.
All right, so it's gonna stay a district. So the question is, what do you want, open space or?
Well, I think protected is better than, to me, protected
Okay,
should be used.
all right, let's take a vote.
That's not just the open space, right? So, because you have farmland protection district, right, so it's protected. I think that should have that same terminology under open space district if it's protected.
Okay, all right, so let's put in protected open space, all right? Sound good?
Fine
You
with
with
me.
that, all right?
Your wish is my command, so.
Protected open space it is, and if the board wants to change it, they can change it,
That's like-
all right?
Yeah.
So,
So we got
we've got
protected,
the open space map
Yeah.
is gonna say protected open space, it is gonna be a district, because they're all districts, all right? And then we're just gonna get a couple of corrections that we're just gonna touch up on.
So, I'm sorry, does it say farmland protection district?
Farmland
Preservation, I
preservation,
think.
Reservation?
Farmland protection.
farmland
Hold on.
preservation. It's not the same word, it's close,
Good exercise. Farmland protection district,
okay?
How about open space protection district?
maybe just said,
No, you said protected open space district.
Yeah,
Reverse the.
that
Yeah.
was fine.
there you
There, good.
go, all right.
And Jim, that took 20 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I mean,
Alright.
if we're keeping time, that was 20 minutes.
Okay. Any other issues with the map of the farmland, or the open space and farmland preservation map? Having heard none, 5B, farm to residential zoning review of area maps 1, 3, and 5, 7. That's in the, further down in our packet. Let's see, pretty early on, page 9, I believe this is what we're looking at. Some of the areas that we're talking about zoning or rezoning, like farm to RE2 or farm to RE3. Some parcels seem to be pretty obvious when it's an entire subdivision that's basically has this uniform amount of subdivided properties, and it's like, looks like there's 30 or 40 properties, and it's farm, but there's no farming going on at all. It isn't a it's a residential. So
and none of these are PUDs, correct?
That's
yeah,
good.
correct, because we're not going to, like, there is some examples in there, I believe they were taken from the Carmeros map where it says PUD to RE2
Yeah.
on some of that. We're not addressing that.
Okay.
We're not changing that. Okay, but it's a good clarification from that. So, if we're looking at the first area, Area 1's F to RE2, you're showing a nice little picture of what it looks like. And there's a couple of parcels, but it's just like, there's a subdivision right next to it, across the street, and up north, it's all subdivisions, so. I don't, is this a recommendation from staff for this one?
You know,
here?
this could have gone either way. It's not part of one of these larger subdivisions.
Right.
And there's a couple of these sprinkled throughout town. And I think on the others, I recommended, we might as well just leave them as farm, because it
Right.
actually looked like there was some type of farm buildings there, and they kind of met the minimum lot size for the farming district. This one could go either way. I will say in virtually, I think all of these, and it wasn't, so I had 400 and some parcels, you know, and I was looking at each one, in the GIS, where you come up with the tax records, and I didn't check all 400, but I kind of did it frequently. And when it gives the classification, they were all residential. I don't recall seeing anything that came up classified as farmland, including this.
Okay.
So this is, I mean, it's a residential use. It's 2 lots. I think it might have been the same owner, so it would have been one zoning lot.
Right,
But, you know, there's nothing there that would indicate that farming is
yeah.
occurring.
Is that,
Which
So-
subdivisions were they, Rolf?
I don't know the names of them. Sorry.
Are they on the map?
The Carmeros map.
Yeah, I don't know if the
I don't
subdivision
know if
names
the
are
name,
on
yeah,
there.
I don't believe the names, but the location might be closer.
It's the one map right here that's on its.
This one,
Yeah.
where at?
We're looking here.
Okay.
Several. So it's just all of these, almost anything on here colored. Ignore the PUDs, so that's what I meant by ignore. And then,
Not the change,
there's
not
no
the change.
change. I mean, Barb knows
That's what
that.
drives me nuts here.
This is Briarwood. That one I know. I don't know the names. As I go through the map, sometimes I'll see the subdivision names, you know, you know, the GIS is on there.
So Corn Glen is, F?
If it's on there, Mark, then
Yeah, that-
Yeah, that's it.
part of,
L.
yeah. And so it's understandable where like, okay, something from 40 years ago got F, but something that is current, this Coron Glen, you'd think would have been changed unless there was this court order designated ruling. And Carmen, is there anything about that with any of these, that if it's court order designated, that this would somehow, that would prevent you from just trying to change the,
I mean, it would depend on what the order says.
okay.
Yeah, I'm not entirely familiar with how those proceedings resolved, but it would depend on what the language
Because
of it
that's
says.
what I keep hearing, is some of these were court
Right.
order designated.
That's what was
and then
discussed
what does
last
that
time,
mean,
too.
You know, is it,
Right.
I mean, I could see, that, okay, this has, a developer complained and said, I want 1 acre, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, and
And the
the
county said
county
no.
said an acre and a half,
Yeah,
or something like
right.
that, you know, I don't know.
Sure.
I'm just trying to figure out what,
But
why.
Our
court order
subdivision was that way.
designation.
They wanted one thing, and the county said, no, we want more, and then they got a judge to say, no, you have to do what the developer wants.
Right.
In the short term of it.
And,
Right.
I mean, these aren't, there's no farming in those subdivisions.
No, not at all.
No.
Right. I mean, the village taking over the control of the property from the county, it would likely be bound by whatever the order said. I find it unlikely that it would say that they had to, you know, maintain a specific type of zoning use district. But we couldn't, I'd have to see the order to say.
Right.
But if we're
I-
standing in the place of the county, then
Right.
yeah, we would be bound by something specific, a court order that's specific to zoning. You know, if it was a judgment or something against the county for monetary damages that wouldn't flow through
Yeah,
to the
I
village,
also
but-
find it highly
Yeah.
unlikely
Right.
that a court would take away elected officials' ability at some point in the future to rezone
Sure.
property. I find that unlikely. I was talking to Barb previously, and she can chime in here. We were speculating, perhaps it's based on a conversation you had with someone, whether somehow, and, these ideas of a court order and what's actually in them get misinterpreted, and there's rumors, whether it was actually a court battle to convert farmland to a subdivision. And the court order actually said you can have a subdivision,
Right.
but whether they said it has to remain farm zoning forever is another matter.
I think it's just, it fell through the cracks.
That's what I think, too.
I
I think
just-
so, too.
Nobody
Think the
went back
developer
and
That's what I
changed
think,
it.
that's what I think, too.
I mean, if you're talking about subdivisions with, let's say 1 to 2 acre lots that are completely developed and they still have farm designation on them or district designation, I'm not sure what the concern would be then to formalize that, to make them one of our larger residential use districts if, like you said, you're not having farming uses on them. I mean, there may be some changes with regard to bulk regulations, accessory, or ADUs. So, I mean, those are some things, but changing the entirety of the district itself, I don't know why that would be affected by a court order.
No, court
All right,
order
I think
part
it's
doesn't make
beyond our
any sense.
purview here. So,
Right, I mean, I'm still investigating, and I
Yeah.
called the county, and I haven't got an answer from them, but, sooner or later, we'll get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
And it also begs the question, too, if there is a court order, I can't imagine it applies to, we got like 8 or 9 of these subdivisions, I can't imagine it applies to all of them. It might be one specific. So we'll dig it out. If someone comes in here, if we have a public hearing, and they're waiving a court order, and we
Yeah.
investigate and find out it's true, then okay. Then we'll have to reconsider, whatever the case may be. But I really am with Carmen. I find it hard to believe that there would be a court order that would really limit our ability
The zone.
to zone to
Yeah.
whatever we want,
Right.
And particularly when it's obviously, I've been driving around, I took another drive today on some that would be proposed to R2, and, there's no farming, there's no farm buildings, there never was, so.
But some of those subdivisions were built with less than 1 acre lot.
Oh, yes,
yeah,
there's some that
definitely.
are like 17,000 square feet,
Yeah.
Shaking,
that
that
was-
was
Yeah.
my grandfather's contribution.
yeah.
Selling property to develop.
So,
it, turned into having
anyway.
lots.
But,
So can we press on
Can I have a, yeah,
Kathleen, Judy?
I just want to make sure, you're talking about a quarter, if this was part of the record in King County?
It should be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why didn't we research that for you to see if you
Yeah.
have a case number?
Right.
or name of the case?
well, that's what
We
we
don't-
don't have.
so, but I think we just do that on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, I mean, if it comes up, I mean,
Yeah. I've taken a couple of the known subdivision names and done searches, and nothing came
unless you
up.
want to be proactive and look ahead.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
know where to search? I mean, we don't,
Well, if you knew the subdivision,
if we knew the subdivision,
yeah, you know the subdivision,
then
yeah.
start there, but.
Yeah. And
Oh,
I
we don't
did a
even know
search of
that.
1 or 2, and nothing came up, but
Right.
maybe I picked the wrong
Would it have
ones.
any impact on their real estate taxes?
No,
Taxes are based on use.
yeah,
Then there's no reason not to change it.
Yeah.
right. And,
All right, so the first area, Area 1, after RE2, which we talked about, just said, you could say go either way. It just, everything around it is, looks like RE2. It's in the subdivision, so I would agree to rezone RE2. That'd be on the first diagram page of area, page 9 of overall of the packet, which shows the photo of the property and then the red square there. Any problems with that? Concerns, okay. Next one, Area 2, after RE3. Now, I did notice there's like, no, disregard. So this looks like 3 parcels here, all in the same general area. One part of it looks like one subdivision and part of another subdivision, and then one property up in the corner. The two the two larger properties, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Right.
I did a little question on the FRE3 and that one in the upper right corner across the street from that open space area.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that, but it doesn't seem to fit anything else there,
Correct.
because it's a subdivision in itself, so.
Right. That's Hastings. That lot was the house that was originally on that property that was not part of the Hastings.
Okay.
Not part of the subdivision.
It's not part of the Hastings subdivision. And so it's not included in any of the development plans.
Okay.
Or, so
Which
as a
makes
result,
sense.
so as a result, it has been farming, and yeah, it should be RE3.
Because there's no farming going on. right?
There isn't from the air
farming, and it's
photo.
a
No,
house.
they sold the farm for the subdivision.
Yeah, right.
And kept the house.
Kept the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So-
actually, I don't think it was. That wasn't really the farmhouse. That was, this is a
No,
separate house.
kept the house, I said.
Right, but that was not part of the farm.
No.
Anyway,
Yeah.
it's,
So rezone it. Hey, just a note, as we go along, if you're
Yeah.
curious, there was this table. So I sorted this by map area. So you can take a look here. So this is map area 3, and I can scan down here. We're talking about lots that are 0.76 acres, 0.87, 1.13, 0.91. So you can get a feel for how big these lots are. And you'll see, a lot of these,
Because
they really
RE3
aren't.
is 1.0 or 1.25?
I'm sorry?
RE3 is 1.0 or 1.25? I think it's 1. It's 4, 2, and 1, or 1.25?
1.25.
1.25,
Yeah,
yeah, 4,
okay.
2, 1.25,
So
and then it
RE3
goes
is
down to
1.25,
like
okay.
30,000, 15.
So it's right in that ballpark then?
Yeah.
So, okay. Area 2, which we're talking right now, Area 2, F to R3, those three, I have no problem going to F to R3. All right?
right.
Anybody
And-
else?
And that hashed area still stays a PUD then.
The PUD stays a PUD?
So, Jim, you were working off of the Camrose graphics to create these, or?
I was, yeah, and then I double check the zoning, our zoning map,
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and then I look at
I'm just
county
trying to make
records.
sure that we're supposed to ignore the PUD to RE2.
Yeah, this is off
Yeah.
the Camaros, it's
Yeah.
there on top, the areas of change.
Yeah.
Is the map that I was working
Just
on.
double checking, yeah,
Yep.
so PUDs are off limits. Put it that way.
End of
right now.
subject.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next page, Area 3, F to R zoning. This, looks like we have F to RE2 and F to R1, which I'm imagining would be RE1. It says R1, but I'm imagining it's RE1.
No, it's actually R1.
R1, because it's a smaller lot.
It is,
It's
they're
not a-
smaller
that's very
lots,
small
yeah.
lots. Okay, so that's 5,000 square feet or so, that's right, okay.
What are the red dots?
Oh, as I was going through, I was just using that to, like my check mark. It was a Adobe Illustrator software, and I was just
Okay.
putting dots on to show that I had looked them up already, because it got confusing, and,
Which ones you had or had not?
yeah, and I forgot to turn the layer off.
Okay.
Okay.
And that other one, was not in the village. See, I got a circle around that. That's what that means. That's not in that.
Yes,
It's not in the
and they're
village.
not in the village, which makes, we'll just leave
Right,
that away, we're
and-
not gonna
and-
touch that.
And here is the one parcel that I circled next to those, that subdivision, it's not in the village. It says, this parcel actually appears to be a farm,
Okay,
that was recommended for rezoning to RE3. And it looks, I would say, based on their photo, that it's a farm. It's a larger in size, whether it's actively being farmed, but I think it was a farm, and it still kind
that
of
seems
looks
err
like.
on the side of conservative.
So I would just leave that alone.
Conservative, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at the yellow ones right now, or kind of below the bottom half of the page. So, so we're gonna ignore the F to RE3 with the red lines, the two around, so we have the F to RE2, and then at the very bottom center, I guess would be F to R1, which is a lot smaller lot, which looks like a subdivision, I guess a separate subdivision, or I'm not sure, but, and then it appears on the east side, or actually this whole large vertical tan taupe is F to R1. So a fair amount of smaller lots there,
Mhm.
yeah. So, looking just from the diagram itself, it's an entire subdivision and of smaller lots, so there's definitely no farming going on there.
That may be one of those court-ordered cases, as well as that the subdivision directly to the northwest of that parcel.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out. I
Yeah.
mean, and if we find out, like I said, we'll
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
adjust.
subdivision is it, Jim?
I don't recall the name of it.
All right, and then,
Just west of Burlington Empire, so west of the county garage.
moving to the northern and northwestern portion where we've got the kind of the orange or, I've got F to R2 was one small parcel, which looks like you've got a picture of it, and there's like 5 houses.
Yeah, I drove by there today. They're definitely very small. They're very small lots.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll note this now, there's 16 parcels included here, and there's gonna be a couple more R2 parcels once I get done with Area 4, which we kind of went over last time. But if you remember, we made a distinction for animals between R3 and R2. So
Okay.
R1 and R2
No.
do not allow horses, and they would not allow llamas, goats, sheep, things like that. They would allow chickens and bees. So of all of these parcels that we've looked at so far, there really would be no, or virtually no, impact on the keeping of animals with the rezoning, with the exception of R2. But I drove by today, there obviously, there were no horses there. I mean, these were small lots.
Yeah.
And I didn't see any sheep or goats or anything. Didn't see any chickens either. So I don't think it will really make as keeping of animals, I don't think it will make a
Okay.
difference.
And then just north of the area that's not in the village, there's a couple parcels there. It says F to R2 in there as well. There's no picture that I saw, but I'm assuming it'd be similar in nature there.
Yeah.
It looks like, if I blow it up, it looks like, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
On that one strip, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and almost a 10 or a dozen smaller lots there as well. So that looks like appropriately R2 zoning. So I'm all for that. That sounds appropriate, and for the use of that zoning. All right. If there's no concerns, I'll go to the next map, Area 5, F to R zoning. Don't look at anything that says PUD on it. So we have,
Right.
one there is not in the village, but you have the F to R1 in the middle, right there, which that looks like it's definitely a subdivision that is well divided and has no, be very difficult, it's small lots, so that seems pretty straightforward.
Right.
F to R1. And I don't see anything else on that chart that would, or that page, or that area that would require our attention.
Yeah, one thing I thought I had it on here. So the area down in the lower right-hand of the, southeast of the map, that's not in the village.
Correct.
F to RE3. But there's another F to RE3 area to the west, right by the PUD. And that is one that I think, still looked like a farm, had farm buildings and everything.
Okay.
So that is one I would say
Would leave,
we would leave alone. It was not part of this, what's now a PUD. May have been the original farmhouse to that,
Okay.
that could have been the entire farm, but my gut feeling was to leave that alone, just based on their photo. If
Okay.
you want me to investigate,
No.
I can go.
No, that's good. I prefer to err on the side of, if it's
Yeah.
closer to farm, just to give them the benefit of the doubt and let them keep it farming then. That's where my heart would be on that, so. All right, so pretty straightforward on that area, map 5. No other comments, we'll go to area map 6, F to R zoning. I see the comment at the top, not in the village. All right, so another one of those very small subdivisions, F to R1, which looks pretty straightforward. I can see very small parcels, maybe one a little bit larger, but F to R1 looks very, and then F to RE2, which it says keep F zoning on there. So are you, err on the side of,
Yeah, there were two parcels there. They were under the same ownership. It was essentially like one big area that looked like it could have been a farm. Again, I'm just looking at air photos, but, and that was not part of one of these subdivisions like that area that R1 is. So again, just,
Error on
I
the
think at this point, leave it alone. I mean, the plan commission, if we really want to try and rezone it, we can go back later, but I
Sure.
would just say, leave it like
okay,
right now.
that's fine. Keep, if you think there's potential, there's some barns or whatever, let's just keep it as F zoning then, and err on the side of safety there.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, all right,
Pending subdivision or remain farm.
okay.
The other, on that page, the other one just off to the west, is that F2 to FB? So that's just a rename, kind of a renaming of it, correct? Because-
Where are you, what map you on?
Area map 6,
6.
middle, far left, right near the open space, to the left of the open space. It says F2 to FB.
Yeah, we don't
So that's
really,
just a
I mean, the F2, there's just one F district now. And, so that was in the, 2014 zoning map, there was an F2.
Yeah.
And they're turning that to farm business, which I think that's an overlay. So the underlining zoning would still be farm, and then there'd be
I
this
see.
overlay farm. And so there's no change
I
there.
see, okay, okay, all right. So it's kind of like the open space, it's like,
Yeah.
all those things, they just
Right.
delineates an overlay of that, okay. So that would be F2, just be leaving it,
Yeah.
leaving it F,
Yeah.
F, okay, all right.
Yeah, that was the landscape business.
Yeah.
Christmas tree house.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Christmas lights.
I'm not seeing anything else on that page, area map number 6. So area map number 7, F to R zoning, let's see, ignore the PUD. So if I'm looking at the picture on the upper left-hand corner of that, is that regarded to the F to RE2?
No,
Or
that
is
is
that the F to R1?
F to R1 to the immediate right of
Okay,
that photo.
all right.
I couldn't really figure this out. It looks like there was a farm, and this, what is to be designated R1, if we decided that looks like it was the farmhouse. There's farm buildings behind there. I think it was sold off and somehow subdivided. The ownership now is different, so there's actually no farm buildings on this property now. There's a single-family home there.
Which one is that?
This is, we're in area map 7.
Oh, seven.
Yeah, and you can kind
In
of
the
see across from
top
Fox.
center, just to the right of the picture,
Yeah,
just a small, so R1's pretty small, so that's the smallest, no,
yeah, and it's a smaller lot, but you can see.
no, R1's larger.
Yeah, you can see a barn behind it, and there's a couple other buildings that look kind of like they were
30,000.
outbuildings for a farm.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I don't know, I'm not certain there.
It's the farm Fresca
So this is it.
building, right on Campton Hills Road, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
so it's like
a
3/4 of an
single-family home.
acre roughly, I think.
It's pretty good size, isn't it?
Oh,
3/4 of an acre?
That's at the corner of Hampton Hills, where Jim Cosey has his garlands and such. There's some sign hanging out in front. It's right across from Mill Creek Prairie. And he acquired those two lots. He acquired the one just recently and tore down the house that was on it, and all. And it was originally owned by a contractor who lived in the lot to the west, and then the lot to the east, he built in 63 or so, he built a ranch house on that. And then the gentleman who bought the original house has since bought that ranch house. He tore that down, but he left the garage, and he has a little farm stand operation, grows garlics and all, Jim Cosey, I believe it is. So that's what that is. So what you're looking at, did you see a little garage light?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was actually just a little outbuilding of the garage that
Okay.
So, yeah, so that's probably 1960s, and whereas the house that is back, the big white one, they built that, there was a little white house.
Yeah.
So is it basically used as residential? So
Yeah.
it's residential?
Yeah, I mean,
And
yeah.
there's no active farming that you're aware
Well,
of?
he's growing garlic and stuff like that,
So he is growing garlic and stuff? No?
yeah. and
Well, let's
does
leave it as
maple
that.
syrup.
Whatever you want.
Leave it at F.
I mean,
Yeah, let's leave it at F.
Yeah.
Leave it at F, all right? If he's doing that, then let him have it. All right. The other, let's see, if you go to straight down in the, straight down south there, F to RE2, looks like that whole surrounding, it might have been like a PUD.
It's a PUD, yeah.
Yeah, it's a PUD around it. Well, once again, it might have been sold, so, looks like your recommendation on those two, in the red boxes, you're saying just keep as, F zoning.
Yeah, and that was another case, I can't remember if this was under common ownership, but it was not part of the PUD subdivision. You can kind of tell by the PIN numbers as well.
Right.
You know, and it was just, the access was off of whatever was that, it's not Route 38, but whatever road that is. So it was not part of the
Campbell Hills.
subdivision. It's kind of like to the lower left, that we covered that already. So I just thought, just leave that alone. And there's actually, that's the picture of it right below, the red
Okay.
box. You see it there?
Yeah, if that other one we left alone, right?
And you can
So
see
let's
up
leave
in
that
the
one
upper
alone.
right-hand corner, there's some type of, I don't know, it's like, you know, grapevines or what?
Yeah,
or
there's,
the-
yeah,
the-
some trellises of some
Yeah,
type.
trellises or
Yeah,
something there.
maybe hops, who knows?
Hops, yeah, I was saying
Yeah,
hops for beer,
whatever.
maybe, home brewing or something,
Or
so.
wine, yeah.
I just said, okay,
No,
fine.
no, I would agree. And if we're treating the other one just to the southwest of that as leaving it F, let's just be consistent, and then we'll leave all three of those as farms, okay? The other two would be out to the east in the middle, it looks like F to R1, which that one looks pretty straightforward. Fairly consistent lots. And then F to RE3, which looks very, it connects to it, but it just seems to be larger lots.
Yeah.
So that seems to be very logical in that respect. And RE3 and RE1 and R1 are right, the next categories next to each other. So I have no problem with that. I think that sounds like a good use of zoning in those two places. Comments or criticisms? Questions? Because that's the last area on the map to look at.
Okay.
All right? All right. Other points, and any other things that came up in between you sending this out, or any other questions about areas that you wanted to get an answer on? Or
No, that was
Okay.
it. I'm
All
still
right.
doing, you know, I had most of Area 4 done, that's what you saw in the packet last week. I'd kind of approached it a little differently, but I'm doing that now, and, you know, I'd already kind of validated the Camiros rezoning, and I'm not seeing any issues there. I think pretty much, well, it was actually that guy who came in here and talked. He does have a farm.
Yep.
I mean, one of the staff has been out there. And Camiros had recommended that to rezoning to R, but that is, I think, should remain.
I would agree. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
he actually, when I drove by and you look at it on the map, and the colleague here in the building department has actually been out there and visited.
Okay.
It's
Good.
not part of another subdivision, I mean, it's a farm, so I
Right.
think he was correct.
All right, well, good for going out there and checking that out and just validating that, so thank you to staff, getting good information there. All right, if that was the farm and residential zoning view, the maps, then 5C would be the review of residential zoning districts, areas of change map. So we had a nice discussion of districts, so that we got that out of the way.
Yeah, so
But you want to review
Right.
the zoning
yeah,
districts?
really, this is just the Camiros zoning map, this is the area of change, so it's not on there. I know I have it here somewhere, you don't want this.
Is this for the ones that when they had penciled in changes, or?
So here it is, this is, well, no, that was, so this is, this was, what was gonna be the zoning map. So what they had this areas of change, and that was the PUDs and the F to whatever, and a few other minor things. And then on this map, essentially, all they were doing was taking, you know, the R1 remains R1, R2 remains R2, R3 remains R3, all right? And then RE2, that is essentially E2, what was E2. They just state anyway. It's pretty much the same district as far as permitted and special uses,
And size.
lot sizes. So all we're really doing is just changing, yeah, the designation. So that's remaining the same. So, again, I have not gone through this 100%, but I've taken kind of just spot checks, and this, what they were doing, I mean, that seems accurate. All they were doing was taking E2 and changing it to R2. All right? And R1 remained R1.
Changing
R4
name only.
Yeah, so that's it. I mean, it's simple. I mean, we're just gonna do that, follow that example, unless, someone notifies me or the commission, hey, it brings something to my attention that this should be something else. And then since I'm standing up here, so we've covered open space protection. We've covered farmland protection. We've covered commercial. We've done F to R. There's no discussion on leaving this, and the only thing remaining is farm. So anything that's actually a farm remains a farm. So the farm, that was white on our previous map, and I think they still had it white on this map, which I really don't like. So all of these areas within the border, this black line, like right up in here, that's white, so that's all farm. And these are very, very large parcels. I'm vaguely familiar with the area, I've looked at it on air photos. It's all zoned farm, appears to be farm. This is farmland up here, so that would remain farm.
Okay.
And that's our zoning.
What about in the middle there, Jim? Right in the middle, go up just a little higher, one more, right there. Is that farmland there also? Or is that not part of the village? Yeah,
That's not in the village, there's a little area here. You see that black line?
yeah.
Yeah. So this unincorporated, there's a little finger, for whatever reason.
Barb, what area is that?
It's by Whitney, I think, or not, no, Whitney, Brown Road and.
Brown Road, yeah,
Yeah,
It's Campton Trail.
Campbell Trails.
yeah.
And
That one
fire-
subdivision?
Yeah, and it's like a donut hole.
Yeah, they
Everything around it
sued
is-
to exit the village, disconnect,
The disconnect.
yeah.
Yeah, well, they never got in, I think.
Oh, they were in, but they sued to disconnect,
Really?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why there's a lot of cutouts in that map that look erratic or, mysterious, but that's because people,
When was that, Jim?
2007, 8,
Well, that probably shortly
yeah,
after. the
shortly after
incorporation.
incorporation, yeah.
Or suing. The disconnect.
Yeah.
Somebody, others actually come in, so.
So unless there's any discussion, I mean, that's the zoning map.
Yeah, the only discussion, I do kind of wonder if it would be any better to have just some kind of a light color or something for.
We are, definitely, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, we've,
I feel the same way, we were pointing that out,
Yeah.
it's just white, it just doesn't give me like,
right, no,
give
no,
me
we've,
any clarity, but hey, no, that actually is a district, and that is.
right. I've discussed that with HR Green, and they're,
Yeah, okay.
we're gonna do that.
Okay.
In
Good.
fact, I think maybe on, well, no, I guess it hasn't shown up yet. But, yeah, that's, again, we have a couple weeks, take a look at this. If you want me, I think I sent you a digital copy of this, if anyone wants a bigger paper copy. Did you ever get your paper copy?
I never did.
Did you come in for it?
I did.
And they didn't have it ready?
They gave me the nice binder of the draft, but no maps.
Oh, okay, sorry, okay, so, in any event, if you want
I do.
maps like 11 by 17, If we
24
get our-
by
if we-
36 would be much better.
the printer conked out tonight as I was printing my copy of the packet, so.
Tracy fixed it.
They did, okay, good. Okay, so I guess we can print.
The
All
bigger
right.
the better.
But so 11 by 17, or I can have, bigger maps made. I can order that tomorrow, and then you can have that, maybe early next week. And, so.
I would
if you-
take the bigger maps, Jim. The 11 by 17's not good enough. I mean, it's not big enough for me,
If you want to take one of these with you tonight, I think I got 2 copies.
okay?
Yeah, I'd like one too.
Then take them and I'll order more for myself. I'll let you do that, okay? Just at the end of the meeting, just come and grab them.
Okay?
So, that's all I have for the zoning map then.
Good, good. that means completion is near.
But I do wanna go over something, there's been some emails back and forth, I just do wanna cover that.
I did see some of that,
Right,
so.
so, and I was talking to Joe about this earlier, and I've talked to Barbara about it. So I was surprised, when I started to look at these subdivisions that are residential subdivisions, that we intend to rezone from F to R, whatever.
Two or whatever.
And, you know, there's over 400 parcels, 420, and I probably got another 40, 50, maybe 70 to do. That's a lot of letters that have to go out. In some cases, one person owns 3 or 4 parcels, so, we might be down to 350 letters. But that's a lot of people who are gonna get a notice of a rezoning, and I am, somewhat concerned about an education purpose, It's not gonna affect their taxes. There is a feeling here that I've encountered in talking to people on the phone, that if they have F zoning, they are somehow exempt from any county or village rule. Like, I don't-
Sovereign rule. That's all.
Right, yeah,
Up to sovereign SR, sovereign rule.
But there is that, like, well, I'm F, well, I'm zone F, I don't have to apply for a building permit. Well, yes, you do, but there is that rule. I'm F, so I get to burn all the waste I want. No, you don't. That actually goes by zip code, not zoning. It comes from the EPA. So, but there is this feeling out there, so when people see that there's a movement or plans afoot to change their F zoning, I think they're gonna get very excited very quickly. So we've been working on a draft letter that goes through step by step and what are the differences. Between animals, I already indicated that. There is a difference on location of where you can put a chicken coop or a beehive. For the residential, can only be in your rear yard. I think that's a relatively minor distinction. Other than that, we pretty much gave however many horses you want to have and can support, go ahead. That should not be an issue. The burning is not an issue. The taxes are not an issue. The dimensional standards, not too much of an issue. Side yard setback for farming is 10 feet. For our districts, it's 15 feet. I mean, that really shouldn't affect too many people. Fences, you can't have barbed wire in a residential district, but I don't think there's too much barbed wire in these areas where we're rezoning. If there is, it's non-conforming, they can keep it. There's, I think, a difference in height. So if someone has a 8 or 9 foot fence, they can still keep it, but eventually it would go away. Might be a minor issue to some people. The real issues, and I think we're gonna segue here in the review of the text, I think the real issue is gonna be with the parking and storage of commercial vehicles and RVs. Because right now, they kinda have a free rein in the F districts, the farming district, and with the R districts, there will be some prohibitions and restrictions. On the commercial, we can take a look at what that says. As I understood it, we went back and forth last time, and in the draft, we decided on C and D plates would be prohibited in residential districts. So that, might be an issue. Do we want to back off and just exclude D districts and allow C? What's Forte Plumbing trucks have? I mean, it's funny, there's a lot of road construction, sidewalks and curb and gutter work going on in my neighborhood. I walk the dog, I've been taking photos of all these contractor and construction trucks. I'm surprised at how big a lot of these trucks are that have B plates. There's a lot of big vans, a lot of big pickup trucks that have B plates.
Well, they're up to 10,000 pounds.
I'm not sure how many people out there are actually gonna have D plates. What I suggested in one of my emails is if there is, a big outrage, we say, okay, we'll maintain a registry at Village Hall. You come in, let us know you have a truck now, and we'll leave it be, if there is outrage. That would be my suggestion. I do think we need some type of restriction in the residential districts on these larger vehicles.
I think the consensus from my recollection was that we all agreed that D was a non-starter.
D is out. I've
D
just,
is out.
C,
That-
I understood
yeah.
C
So-
was also to
That
be
was-
prohibited.
Yeah, and I
We went
think
back and forth.
Yeah, we were kind of going back and forth, so, but I think
Well, C starts at 8,500.
no, I think it's higher than that. Yeah, I think it's above 10. I think it might even be 12.5 or something, I can't.
No, I know it's not that.
In Illinois, C is 8,001 to 10.
C is
Yeah.
8,000, oh, you're right.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, it requires.
That's-
I don't think we should change the designations of that, just, and we also shouldn't use the word change when we're letting people know that we've just updated, village ordinances.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually trying to bring some definition, because, before, that was what, the current, which we adopted from the county, was what, a 3/4 ton?
Yeah.
I think it was 3/4 ton bed load, which was, we all decided is just come way out of date, and it means that anybody can.
It's too hard to figure
Yeah.
out, too. I mean,
Right, and
quite
I thought the
frankly.
whole idea of plates was a little bit more easy to enforce, so, I don't have a problem with C or D. I mean, I think
I agree.
I would go with C or D, because I think we talked about this too. What was the goal? The goal was not to have all these huge trucks with ladders and everything hanging on and parked all over the
Right.
neighborhoods, and that's not the purpose of it,
We'll see, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how many people in these areas might have
Well,
huge
maybe
trucks
we'll get some
like that.
feedback on that, and
We
we'll
will.
see where we go from there, but I think,
We're gonna keep, C's okay, you're just gonna restrict D trucks?
right now, I think
C
we'd
and D.
like to restrict C and D.
What,
Yes.
what are those, the really huge pickup trucks now? I'm seeing more and more.
A lot of those are Bs.
A lot of those are
Yeah, a
big.
lot of
Yeah.
these, you get the super heavy duty Ford, whatever,
Yeah.
the large trucks, it's a
They're less
B,
than
it's a B.
10,000 pounds, yeah. The C's 20,000, or 20.
You said 8,
Yeah, 8 to 10.
You're probably looking at payload.
or
Uh,
total?
What are you,
or
what are you
total?
looking at? Empty weight?
26,000
I'll
pounds.
look.
Curb weight? There's so many weights. Curb
Terribly.
weight, empty
You
weight,
can't transport more
tar
than
weight.
24 passengers, so you could have a small bus, basically.
As a C?
Yeah, they have some pictures of things like that here, and there's some, it doesn't look like the normal RV, but they have like a really big truck-like front instead of just, the
Yeah.
bus-like RV.
Right.
So that's apparently what a CRV would be.
Just the type of
I don't
weight,
know if
I
I've
guess.
even seen
what
those
type of weight
much
it is.
around here at all. They're all
I mean,
more street.
DMB indicates 8,001 to 10,000 for C.
8,000, 10,000, does it, what kind of weight? It just says
Flat weight truck.
flat weight, so it's the weight of the truck?
Barb, I would think our goal would be to,
D is 10 to 12.
get the work done that hasn't been done, So, like when we talked about the comprehensive plan, it goes back to 2013, so I think we should continue to move forward and get things updated.
Let's go with C and D for now. And
All
then
right,
get
we'll
some-
see what happens,
See what,
and,
get some
yeah.
feedback, and you can always change it, and
We'll
go from
direct the
there.
calls to you, Jim.
Yeah, I get them anyway.
All right.
And then the other, there was one more point I wanted to make, I just thought of it.
That was in your email?
Yeah, it was that fences I covered. RVs, there is a difference on RVs in residential areas, they can park them, but there's, being covered or locational requirements, so that might be a difficulty for some people. If they're zone farm now, then it really doesn't matter, but now they're gonna have some restrictions imposed on them for their parking of RVs. I think in most cases, well, I shouldn't say that, but I think they might be able to modify. Again, do we create a registry and have people come in if they have an RV now and, we ask for the registration, we just, and they show that they can't follow the ordinance, comply with the ordinance? I don't know. But if I owned an RV and I had this farm zoning, I've been parking at some place that now becomes illegal, I mean, I probably would be upset, because where are you gonna park your RV now? Those are, I think, the most contentious issues that we might face is regarding the vehicles, once people understand everything else. So, those are just my thoughts on proceeding.
Yeah. And that would happen if you go from farm to R2, you said?
Yeah, because
Farm
we
to
have those
R2.
restrictions on the RVs, and I think they just pertain to residential districts.
So
That's in the-
any residential district?
Yeah, that's just in the parking chapter, you know.
Yeah.
Find it here in a second.
James, did you
Okay.
say 2 weeks, then? Did they parse the 2 weeks?
I think we went back and forth on, I can't remember what, I
Yeah,
think
I think we
I had
shortened
10
it.
days, I
Shortened it
think we
to
went
one.
back to 2
I think
weeks.
we shortened it down to one week.
Yeah.
But, you know, if somebody has, let's say their parents from out of town coming with their RV, and they're traveling all the way from Florida or something,
Yeah.
you know, 2 weeks wouldn't be unreasonable.
Yeah, that's what I thought. but-
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, we did go down to 7 days.
Yeah, we're at 7
Yeah,
days.
I think it should be 2 weeks.
But you wouldn't want anybody in your house for 2 weeks, especially with an RV.
That's it, they can buy a special license from the village that says they can have it only for 7 days for those who don't want the relatives to stay beyond 7 days. Yeah, we're zoned this way.
There's another angle.
We need revenue.
So you have to look at what's the goal. The idea is not to have an RV park and plugged in, you know, in front of your house across the street or whatever, or in your neighborhood for long periods of time. That's the idea. Now it becomes
2 weeks
subjective
goes
to,
by quickly,
so, I mean,
I'm in favor of the 2 weeks. It seems that you're right. People are traveling and, you know, if they're from out of town and they're traveling in an RV, I mean, I could see where, you know, maybe they want to stay a month or two, but, you know, I think 2 weeks is a good compromise.
well, actually, it was what was in the ordinance before, right, Jim?
It was 14.
It was 14 days, 2 weeks.
I has adjusted, I think, 10 and wound up with 7.
Yeah.
And I don't
Or maybe
know-
I suggested 7.
I don't know if many complaints, even if any complaints have come in about that, so if it was already in the ordinance.
Well, it sounds like, Joe, you have a heartburn. 2 weeks, let's go back to 2 weeks. Let's just do it, let's keep it the same, what it was before.
All right,
All right.
14 days then.
14 days, 2 weeks, all right. 14 consecutive days. 14. All right, let's see, trying to see if you had, where is it? I'm looking at, you had the differences between F and R zoning, you sent that out as well. I was looking at that briefly to see if you had any other questions or comments in there. Yeah, you did. So you sent out this zoning commission, I call differences between F and R zoning.
That's the draft, yeah.
Yeah, so it was I think it's 7 pages or something like that. Anyway, there were a couple of red line and questions that you had. One of them, looking at the table of comparison of R and F dimensional standards.
Yeah.
You had the maximum impervious surface coverage as a percentage of the lot. And RE1 was 35%, and RE2 was 35.3, RE3 and R1 was 40%, R2 was 50, and then you had R3 and R4 is 60%. And comment from staff was we need to reconsider that 60% is way too much. So if you're thinking about a 5,000 or a 10,000 square foot lot and then impervious surfaces, I'm thinking about asphalt. Would that cover the footprint of the building as well?
Yeah, no, I was thinking this was on for the farm. I can't imagine, like, something being zoned farm that would be 60%. I think did I highlight the wrong thing there? Let me find that table.
Well, it says comparison of
Which
R.
page was this?
1, 2, 3, page 3. Now, this was
Oh,
the.
I don't know if that email, I don't think everyone got it. That just
Okay.
went to you. And
Okay.
if you go to, I think it's in your packet, the zoning ordinance.
yeah.
I think this is on page 33 of the zoning ordinance. Okay, yeah. It's table 6-3. So I was referring to F and FP. if you take a look, if you bring that up, page 33, it wasn't with the R districts, I'm fine with that, because I do realize they're smaller, so obviously you're gonna have more of a percentage covered, but I don't know why in an agricultural, a farm district, we would have maximum impervious surface coverage as 60%. I think what this is in here for is because they knew they had a lot of residential lots that were really R2 and R3 that were zoned farm. I think that's why this was originally in here. But there's no reason, if our farm zoning is really gonna be farm, I can't imagine, a 5-acre farm, you'd have 60% covered.
Covered, yeah, with impervious surfaces.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a holdover because we had all these farm zone properties, and that's why they say agricultural use and other use, because they were referring to these residential subdivisions that were zoned farm.
Agricultural use.
I don't think that should be in there.
So, okay, so it says maximum impervious surface coverage as a percentage of the lot, agricultural use, none. So it means no impervious surfaces in the agricultural.
Well, there's no
right?
standard, what it means there's no standard. We
There's
don't-
no
we don't
standard,
write-
there's no standard. And then all other uses is 60%. Yeah, and that's farm and farm preservation.
Yeah,
Yeah, so, and that was all from the Camaros? This is kind of.
yeah, I think, but I think, again, as you work through this and you do one chapter at a time and things don't always go together,
Right,
and I'm finding
right.
that mistakes I made as I go through this. But I think that was, they were thinking, oh, we have these residential lots that are 15,000 square feet, so we should allow 60% coverage, because that would fall under all other uses. But I don't see any need for that. I mean, most of the farm zoning is gonna be farm.
Yeah, so.
I mean, I guess in one sense, it doesn't matter, we leave it in, because there's not gonna be a lot of parcels that fit this category, other uses, but it just
I
seems.
still would like to say maximum impervious surfaces, 60%, sounds great, because you're talking about F, farm and farmland preservation.
Yeah.
So why would you want 60%?
You wouldn't.
Impervious, yeah.
You wouldn't.
So, and it says all other
Yeah.
uses, so I'm not really sure what that means, all other uses. Because it's an agricultural use, you can't have none, but then all other, so is that like saying, because I know there's certain things you're allowed to do in farmland, just like you could have a gun range or something like that.
Right.
So then you could have a parking lot, so you could have impervious. So that you could have a certain percentage impervious to have that in that farm district.
When you go up further on the table, look at minimum lot width, shows agricultural use none, all other uses 250.
Right.
The page before?
Just on that same table.
Yeah, it's right,
Just
it's
right
right
above it.
up above.
So there is some
Minimum lot, 5
difference
acres.
between
Oh, yeah, 250.
agricultural use and all other uses in those values. But
Right.
if we don't know what it means, it shouldn't be in there.
No, I know.
Minimum lot area, actually agricultural is 5 acres, all of the use is 2 acres. Minimum lot width, none, although it's 250. Minimum building coverage, okay, maximum impervious is none, coverage 60%. Yeah, you wonder if this is just trying to pick a specific scenario, but it's
Yeah.
trying to cover a specific scenario that I'm
Yeah,
not
I
really
don't know.
thinking about. But if we're talking about farm and farmland preservation, if we got rid of all other uses,
Yeah,
just in those three, you just got rid of all other uses? Because they could always get a variance if they had to, right, or something.
well, yeah, and then, for
Not
the
that we
most
want
part, yeah,
to rely on that, but I mean,
yeah.
I don't like the idea of 60% impervious surface set, because it just seems to defeat the purpose
Yeah.
of what's going on there, so.
Well,
Yes.
can you tell me what 1 acre open space, minimum lot area means?
I believe that is so when the idea is that if a developer is going to donate open space, they don't give you 1/8 of an acre over here, a 1/10 of an acre over here, a 1/4 acre over here. These little tiny carve out, you can't do anything. They say it's got to be a minimum of 1 acre. So it would be usable open space.
So that the open space that's already there now, that could be less than 1 acre in places?
usually this is like if they're going to make a development or make a change, so
Oh,
say,
you're just talking about lots.
not necessarily have to be a lot, it could be open space, they might have a lot, but it would, the idea is to prevent a developer from just taking like corners that they couldn't fit into their scheme or whatever, and just having and then adding them all up and saying, I've given you 5 acres of open space on 50 different parcels, 50 different, little tenth of an acre things. So the idea there is to say minimum 1 acre, so that would be usable open space.
Yeah, I get it going forward, but if there's already something out there.
That's not, this is for the zoning for the future, yeah,
It's lots.
yeah, yeah. If it's behind us, if it's already happened, then that's not what we can't change that, yeah. But that's the intent of that, that's what it's for. Okay, so we're just gonna strike those three lines?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Is agricultural use, what if it's an agricultural business? Is that different enough if you have because isn't that F2 zoning?
Or FB, I think now is, I think it's now
FB.
called FB.
Would that be where the 60% might come in? Because there you might only have a few acres and yet still
It could.
if that's how a farm business is classified or whatever you're gonna call it.
Because that'd be the underlying zoning of F, right?
Maybe
So-
that's where the 60%.
That might be.
Because all other uses, if it's not agriculture use and yet it's farm and FP,
Well, the only other zoning would be farm business, right, underneath that?
Yeah, that's an overlay,
That's
so
an overlay.
Jerry's correct. 60% still seems pretty
Yeah.
high for that.
Right.
Because you got a nursery, that's not gonna be, I mean, I know they have a parking lot, but it shouldn't be that.
well, if they've got 2 acres, minimum lot area, then they want to do 60%.
That's 1.2 acres. That's all.
As Rolf mentioned, they can always seek a variance. I
Yeah.
mean, if
Yeah,
there's-
I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, I can see the FB exception, I can see if that was there, but I would just, I'd let them go, I think.
Well, is gravel considered impervious these days?
Oh, where's Christopher?
Yeah, see, I've started to hear that, that gravel's impervious, not a what.
Yeah.
But anyhow, maybe that's where you have a gravel area to put all your, let's say it is where you want to set stuff outside, but you don't want to pay for asphalt.
Right.
I don't know, it's just, anyhow.
Well,
trying to
one way to be do it,
such
just to
businesses.
reduce the percentage, be another option. Just say, let's
Yeah,
go down to
and-
35%.
And so along that point, right now, it says agricultural use, none. So if we did have something like farm business, then what is it? Is there a standard for it? I think maybe we do need a standard for farm business, but I don't think it needs to be 60%.
Yeah.
And the farm business thing's a whole other thing, because is it only stuff you produce on the farm, which doesn't maybe require quite as much, versus stuff I produce on the farm, plus I'm gonna bring in some retail, wholesale from somewhere.
Well, let's see, if you look at maximum impervious surfaces for all the R districts, the least being RE1, which is 35%, so that's the page beforehand, page 32. That would be 35%, with the larger lot there. So I would think you could go down to something like 20%, if you're doing like farm business, or all other uses, 20%.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that sounds, I mean, if you had 5 acres, that's two.
Yeah, 20,
that's an acre.
25% is fine, and then like the variance
Yeah,
option is always there.
but I think it does give the option for a farm business and be all other uses, so
Yeah.
I'd say, I would recommend 20%. Less impervious is better, I think, in my mind, especially since we're worried about aquifer recharge and all that kind of stuff, and, some people think grass is impervious, because it, just runs off of it, so, all right, so let's put 20%, change 60 to 20, and keep everything else in there, just change the 60 to 20.
Fine, yeah, fine with me.
Right.
I'm just a little confused. This is, where it says agricultural use, none. What does none mean?
None means there's no standard. Do you want to change that?
No standard or
Yeah,
For
none.
minimum lot width.
maximum impervious surface? For both cases.
Okay.
I don't quite understand.
Yeah.
What does none mean?
It means no standard. There isn't, it's like
No
NA.
standard?
Should be NA, I guess,
Right,
because,
NA, because when it says none, it sounds like you're saying there's no
Yeah.
impervious surfaces allowed.
Yeah, it could be interpreted one of the two ways.
right,
Let's go with
Yeah.
NA, and about NA, if it's not applicable.
The
Or
same
exempt.
thing in the minimum lot width then, too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, NA.
about NA,
Oh, yeah.
because that would be consistent through the rest of the document there.
yeah.
I mean, they have to have a lot width, so
Right.
it means there's no
Yeah,
standard. So NA, yeah, okay.
okay, all right, we change
Yeah.
that?
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
good, got that clarified?
See, we're cleaning up the text.
Yeah, yeah, that's good, good stuff. Okay, let's see, now go back, back to where was I? I was over here in the email, okay, so let's see, I think that has been reconsidered. There was, now I'm just going, maybe we might not have this, but then on the email, this table 9.1, animals allowed in residential districts. I'm just reading the highlighted red verbiage that you
Yeah.
put in. Per the table above, horses and barnyard animals would be allowed in F, but not in R2, R3. I think you talked about this before.
Yeah.
So it's just a difference, and that would be one of the issues, potential issues, but, okay. I didn't see anything else of note in there that you had red line or a red line comment on.
I have one other thing, just on the text, since I think we're on that. So
Okay,
in,
yes.
it was accessory use table, I think that's in chapter 8.
Draft zoning ordinance.
Yeah, it's on page 48. It was something I remember we discussed, and we kind of put it off and then never really revisited it. I found it odd when I took a look at the 2023 zoning ordinance, and I even think the Kane County ordinance. They talk about accessory structures and everything, and barn is nowhere to be found. Silo is mentioned once, and that's, you can have a silo, it was talked about some type of mushroom growing place. It was really odd or bizarre. So we put in, under accessory structures, we put barn, silos, and other farm buildings, and then we were gonna have, this was gonna regulate what yard they could be in, and, you know, we were gonna discuss the height and everything. And I looked at this over the past couple days, let me see if I can find, yeah, here it is. Is this it? Okay, so, we were gonna add a section covering barns, I think if I remember correctly, and we never did. We never
Right,
just
I
went
think
back
it
and
was
read
discussion, yeah.
Right, you know, so.
Right.
So, how about something like this, and I can, so, barns and silos or other farm buildings, regardless of zoning district, because I don't want to make existing barns non-conforming,
Okay,
okay? Because that would mean that people really couldn't, they would have trouble repairing them or doing things, I mean, they could repair them, but I just like to get away from making barns and silos and these kind of historic buildings non-conforming. Barns and silos, regardless of zoning district, that are existing on the date of adoption of this ordinance are deemed conforming, regardless of height, square footage, placement on the subject property, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah. Okay? Barns and silos are allowed in the farming district. Barns and silos subsequent to this ordinance, erected subsequent to the passage of this ordinance, are allowed in the farming district. Okay, now, what's an accessory structure? You got a big garage that kind of looks like a barn. I mean, you could still have that, but a silo, I mean, you probably shouldn't have a silo in a residential district. Do we want to attach any type of limitation on size, height, on those? I don't even know how tall a silo is. Do we even matter? I mean, probably won't be building a lot of silos anyway. Did you just leave this alone? I mean, it was something we were gonna come back and revisit, so now's the time to do it. I mean, I'm not sure how we wanna do it, but I do think we need something stating that the existing barns, we're essentially leaving them alone,
yeah,
correct?
I think that's good insight, yeah, I think that's part of the culture.
And we were gonna add, you know, a section on that, and, you know, it just never got put in. So it'd be a very brief thing, just on existing barns. And newer barns, you know, if you were, I mean, I don't know what the height limitation is on in farm district, I think it's 40 feet, but I don't know how big a silo is, and again, I don't know how many people are putting up silos. I guess if they had to take one down and they're putting one up again, then they would need a building permit.
But you wouldn't want a silo in a residential area.
No, not at all. But if it's on a farm, if a farmer, if a tornado comes and blows his silo down, in that case, even if it were non-conforming, I think if it gets destroyed by something like natural disaster, they can rebuild. I can't remember what our non-conforming says, but I'm just, throwing this out for thought. I mean, how do you wanna, no one knows how tall a silo is.
40 feet,
Well,
40 feet.
65 is not unusual.
There you go.
I would think, 450, 60 maybe.
It comes down to, it's like, yeah, I see the point, but how important is this, because there really aren't.
Yeah.
It's not something, but it is part of, that the agricultural, way of life is part of the community, so the history of it, so.
Well, the thing that comes to mind is, Linkaitis Farm, he just built that, that milking parlor here, I don't know, 5, 10 years ago. Now, would that be considered a barn, but it's a milking parlor by design standards today, but it was still what would have been a barn,
I call them dairy barns. I grew up
dairy
in
barn. So,
Stevenson
but I mean,
County,
that's
dairy
still
farm.
falls in the same
Well, this is.
category.
Farm building, that wouldn't be a barn. It says barn, silos, and other farm buildings.
Yeah, that
Okay.
covers, like, if you had a place for hogs or whatever, or, things like that.
Well, the note on here in red says, subject to regulations in Article 10. So what was that?
Well, was it gonna be
Article
X was just a placeholder,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm talking about now. We never came back and revisited that, so we're discussing, what do you want in that section 10, or section X? I'll throw a section in the accessory structures, I'll mention what I read on barns, that we're kind of, if they're existing, we leave them alone. But, do we want to add something for silos, or height, or anything else here? What are we missing?
Is there definitions for barn?
There is a definition for barn.
Okay.
There is a definition for barn. I didn't find silo, but I did put it, we didn't have a definition for barn, I put one in.
And you've got, could you put in, because this is basically permitted accessory structures, could you put in like silos and other farm buildings as like special use? A silos is a special use or something?
Well, they're really accessory structures, so, I mean,
Okay.
it would kind of go, if it is a farm, it should just kind of go along with
Okay.
the farm. And this one, that's why everything's blanked out, when it says what yard it could be in.
Right.
Just because I was always worried about making these existing barns non-conforming, so I didn't really want to put, oh, it's in your front yard, you can't have it, and it's non-conforming now, you're kind of limited in what you can do with it. So I was trying to avoid that. That's why I just had subject to regulations in this separate article or separate section. It should be section. So
this is
now
regard-
I need to, now this hits me in the head, and we never revisited it, so I want to revisit it now. That's the purpose of
Right,
this.
and so this is regardless of zoning, right? Are you saying that this accessory uses is Article 8, and that is for what? So an accessory use in any zoning district? Because this is just this is
Yeah,
just talking about yards.
unless otherwise indicated somewhere in the ordinance, I mean, this would govern,
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, we'd say something to the fact that, barns, silos, and other farm buildings are not in residential are not permitted in residential. Because we're talking about new now, right? You've already talked about encapsulate or protecting or not making non-conforming is a better way to put it, non-conforming
Right.
barns. So now we're really talking about what's new barns, if somebody wants a new barn, right? So if anyone wants to put a new barn on his 8-acre property, so.
And it's zone farming.
That was my first question, is that, does this apply just to farming, or is this to farm to any residential? Because right now, the way the tables it just says front yard, side yard, corner yard. It doesn't tell me what, unless I'm missing another table, it says this is permitted.
No,
Permitted use.
this is something that's kind of hard to really capture in a table. That's why I said, okay, we need a separate section on
Okay,
this.
all right,
So we could have the section say, existing barns are all conforming,
right,
period. new silos are not allowed in
Residential.
residential districts.
Right?
I don't think anyone's gonna build one
No.
anyway, but
Right.
we could say that. Silos are allowed in farm, farm district. The difference between a barn and a large accessory structure that holds autos would be, from the outside, probably minimal.
Right?
Maybe you might get
Lot
a
of
height
pole
difference.
barn, a lot of people have
Yeah,
big barn-
people put up
pole-
pole barns all
Yeah,
over,
right.
let's face it. So, I don't know how to word that unless we allow a barn, a bona fide barn on a bona fide, farming district. Maybe it goes a little higher than 40 feet or something like that. Silo, we could even put it in, just in case one does get built, is 65
Well, in
feet.
the farming district, and if they're farming, there's the, the Illinois right to farm.
Yeah.
So I don't know that you could do too much restriction-wise, except for safety standards,
Right.
on what kind of agricultural structure, limitations, I guess, would be.
Yeah.
Could we put something in to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis instead of trying to come up with terminology on the fly?
But you can't make it a special use, because it's already,
I didn't say a special use, I said determined on a case-by-case basis.
well, that's what special use means.
Yeah, I mean,
Rather
you gotta have some
definition.
standards, you gotta have some review standards. is the
Right.
thing.
Well, the easiest thing would just be to leave silos out. I mean,
Yeah, we can just
Because
be.
really,
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been an issue
Why don't we just leave it out? It's
since.
not, yeah, and it doesn't look
Just
like,
make it barns and other farm structures.
Yeah, that would cover silos.
yeah,
My main goal in this was just ensure that we have some protection to existing barns, no matter where they are. That was the goal. Silos and barns, no matter where they
yeah,
are.
and
that
what
we
you
weren't-
read sounded, with your original.
Right, maybe we
thing.
just leave it, as that, just that
Yeah.
kind of original statement I have in period, and leave it alone.
I think that would show the intent of the village. And,
Yeah.
and you could also add in there that, barn or silos would not be in, residential neighborhoods.
Yeah.
In there,
Yeah,
no, it's not the intent to have silos in residential neighborhoods.
yeah,
And then just make that statement, I think will be good.
yeah,
I think it's gonna be easier than trying to, like you say, pick 65 or 45 feet.
yeah,
or-
okay.
We're just arbitrarily picking that, so, is that,
Like
would
I
that
said,
work?
it's unlikely to be built,
Yeah,
except for the
Yeah.
coal silo we all gonna need when we survive our amendment.
so, does that give you enough direction for what you need to do?
Uh,
You think you got enough information to,
yeah,
okay, just if you don't, contact me.
Yeah.
We'll talk through it again. All right.
hope we don't have a missile silo gap with the Russians. Remember that from Dr. Strangelove at the end of the movie?
Now we're going off the rails. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, status, I mean, we can still come back with the time, but, we can come back to 6, which is the part of a little bit of a draft zoning ordinance, what we've been doing. But the status report, and then we can circle back and then talk a little bit about our next scheduled meetings and then potential, ideas of how to best incorporate some of the things you talked about, education, and then, so we'll talk about that as well. But, status report, 7, with that, it's just kind of at the bottom of your, at the very end of your packet, I believe, right? Just kind of went over everything. I don't think you had much in there new.
I had a couple of things, Walt, on the draft of the zoning ordinance.
Oh, and that's the one that you emailed, Jim
Yeah,
on?
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Just in general, what I'm accustomed to from the business I have been in for my career is writing out the numbers, but then showing the numeral parenthetically. So throughout the document, it's, sometimes it's shown one way, sometimes the other
Right.
way. I say if you do both, it's clearer and easier.
All right. So administratively, I think Jim was like saying, anything below 99, you put the number in, and above it, I'm sorry, just the opposite way. Anything above 99, you write the number, and anything below it, you write both the number.
No,
32 or
what I intended, and I know I have mistakes, I haven't gone through it.
Yeah, yeah.
I have 30 and 60,
Yep.
and per my desire to follow the Chicago manual style, 1 to 99 gets written out.
Okay, so you
So I don't write, I don't have the
36.
numeral 2, I have TWO.
Right.
22, 20 hyphen 2. And then when it gets 100, that's just basic, I think, Chicago manual style. Some other manuals of style have, above 10 or whatever, I just stuck with that. So what Joe was saying was, in all instances where there's a number, to write out 22 and then have parentheses 22.
Right.
I really don't care. I prefer not to go back and have to comb through and do that, but if that's the way you want it, most, and I said today, most ordinances and other documents follow that procedure. I've always tended just not to do it, and like I said, write things out. So, again,
If
your
the whole
wishes.
document was
Yeah,
written out,
yeah,
then I'd say leave it alone, but it's not.
right.
So, to me, it's easier to go back and just show both. It's a better clarification. Because when the way our brains work, when you see a number, you read the number. When it's written out, it doesn't compute the same way.
Right, yeah.
So,
All right.
to me, showing both makes more
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, it's,
Can we do
if
that
that's
then?
what you want, I'll go and do it. It's, but,
We-
so Carmen, why do they do both in ordinances? I mean, if you wrote out 23, that will stand in a court of law. I don't know why, it's just for easy reading or,
It's typically for the codifier, so they can see exactly
Yeah.
where to make the changes, because you might, it's not just the words that are being changed, whether removed or added, it's also
Yeah.
the spaces. So if you really want to be accurate for a codifier, and the codifier is the person who actually makes the changes in the code that is then published, you should strike out and then underline
yeah.
every single thing.
Yeah, when you're redlining or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. If we could maybe just make it consistent, first of all, consistent through the document.
Sure, and
And
how,
then-
how do you want? Do you want,
Let's
do you want
let's do both. Let's
the
do
numbers
both.
in parentheses?
Numbers and then the numbers in parentheses, that'd be great.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
A year away from AI being able to handle something like that,
I know.
not have to-
Yeah.
It's probably a job that will be removed, yeah,
I
taken
know,
over.
I know.
Yeah.
All right.
Change all
Okay.
periods to commas.
I think I went through, and, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it just, table 7.1 or 7-1 and 11-1 should match up. They're for two different uses, but each one of the line items should match up, and they don't. So as you're going through 7-1 and going through 11-1, which is parking, the other one is permitted and special uses, all of the separate subject matter should line up. So some are missing in one and not in the other. So it's just a review of those
Oh,
two
that's what you
tables.
meant.
Okay.
No, I thought I mentioned that. So if there were no parking standards, they don't show, is that the parking table, 11-1?
Yep,
Yeah, so if there's no parking standards, it's just not mentioned. And I think
In the
that's
other
in there
table.
someplace.
In the other table?
So I deleted all of those uses that didn't have, like, we decided there was no parking. That's why they don't match up.
okay.
Yeah. But I thought you were referring to, I did not place them
Nope,
near the paragraph, and I will
Nope.
do that
I was just
later
trying to
on.
match them up.
Yeah, okay. But that's why there's gaps there.
All right.
Do you want me to do these other ones, or no?
All right.
We
Did
don't
Jim-
have to.
Did Jim address them in the email, or did I read?
I didn't see any email.
Okay.
I
did.
sent it this morning before I left, and
Yeah.
that
Didn't
was
get it.
that.
All right,
All
well,
right, so he replied, and
Okay.
he replied, and I saw his replies to your,
oh, go ahead, fire away. I mean, we can do it now.
Well, did we have anything else? Because I sent it to you I didn't send you all of them. So is it better to just add them up and send them to you?
it's a good point, and I think, yes, I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay.
That way Jim has a hard copy record
Yep.
of the concerns.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see going forward too in these next couple of weeks, when if you find something or I find something hey, you know, there's a typo on this page, you
Right.
know, or, hey, this looks out of order, you know, like, what do you?
Okay.
And Jim will say, thanks, or, no, this is meant to be this way,
Yep.
or he'll respond.
Yeah, that's
I
a
think
good,
that's probably the best way, and then you'll have a paper copy, a trails that you could identify.
right, and that's a good point. So if anyone sees corrections, you know,
Rather than coming to the next
Scrivener
meeting
type
and
stuff,
doing- and spending 2
let me
hours
know,
doing that.
because what I'm gonna do, I see some myself in tables, you know, things, just kind of formatting issues and spacing issues and things like that. So I'm gonna go and kind of clean up the ordinance for the next meeting, so when you get your packet, you know, a week ahead of time, it will be version 2, slightly cleaned up. And if there's anything of substance that should be discussed at the meeting, then you know, we'll note that, and then we can discuss it at the meeting.
So, Jim, did you answer about the village engineer?
I did,
Yes.
and the chapter, the zoning administration, the village engineer doesn't really play a role in administering the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
He or she will be involved in PUDs, plan review for PUDs or advice, or
Preliminary-
building permit
preliminary plan.
stuff, or other functions. But as far as interpreting the code or enforcing the code, or processing things for the plan commission, that's just the,
Or subdivision regulations, the engineer's involved with that.
subdivision does that. That's a separate ordinance, though. He or she is obviously involved
I
in
just
that.
thought since it was mentioned that they should be in the Article 2, so it's listed. It's not shown in the front part, it's shown in the back. You know what I mean?
In the back.
It's not listed up front with all the different titles. And
I mean-
then it magically appears somewhere in the text. That's all. It looked out of place.
Well, like I said, he or she doesn't have, I keep
It's
saying
not
he because
staff,
ours is a
yeah.
he.
Yeah.
It's not staff, it's not staff, it's usually a contract, right?
Yeah,
Usually
and,
it's you subcontract out. the
Yeah,
village,
well, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
that still means the same thing, whether it's somebody on staff or an
Yeah.
outside contractor, it's the same thing.
But
It's
the-
the role, not the.
yeah, but the engineer just does not really play a part in administering the ordinance.
Okay.
That's why it's not in that chapter.
Right.
And why engineer might appear someplace
You all
else.
set? Your questions in? Okay. But yeah, I encourage you to email Jim. I think it's great that you've got eyes on it, and then the more eyes, the better. I know I've done documents, and you start staring and you see what you want to see.
Yeah, I know.
So there are things are going to be missed, and so I'm
Yep.
sure he'll appreciate any input you can, and feedback you can give him. All right, would like to discuss, going forward, we had an original plan, or a plan last week, we talked about, and set up a schedule for our next several meetings, with October being potentially or possibly a review of the draft ordinance in the first meeting in October, and then a potential public hearing on the second meeting in October. And then a third meeting in November, which may or may not be needed depending on the amount of feedback, input we get, and basically digesting all that input and then seeing how we want to put that together here. So another possibility would be, do we substitute one of those days and almost have like an education period? So I'm just throwing out ideas. I'm not advocating something, but I'm just saying.
Don't get to schedule a pandemic in the middle of it.
So,
I know.
so, it's October. So, it's an idea and a thought that if we're trying to do, and I do like the idea of a question and answer that you mentioned earlier in the meeting, about trying to educate the folks about what will happen, what will not happen, and making sure they understand what we're trying to do and be very open and honest about it, and what we're not trying to do. So there has to be some education somehow, and one option is to have a meeting. It wouldn't be a public hearing, but it would almost be like a meeting, and the idea would be to have people come and bring their comments. and
Yeah,
so forth.
I called it a workshop.
Yeah,
Workshop, open house.
Yeah.
Open house,
And then,
something,
and then
yeah.
if nobody showed up, I'm just not saying that anybody would, or be a lot of people, but if no one showed up, then perhaps we'd have the option then to work on the ordinance as well. So, anyway, but that would postpone potentially into December, all right? Because we'd only have one meeting in November. So, don't have to do it that way, we can stick to the original plan. We would basically have one more meeting to go over this draft. So we'd have a couple weeks to go over the draft. The next meeting to finalize the draft of what is in the draft, and then have the public hearing in the second week or second meeting of October, and then have that meeting still in November as originally planned to digest everything or continue the public hearing if it comes to that
That
point.
means that we have to have everything sorted out after the October 2nd meeting, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
ninth, yeah.
Which I think the map is pretty
October
well.
9th.
Yeah, yes, thank you. So the map is pretty well sorted out, and so the text is pretty well sorted out. It's just now looking at and using our editorial talents to review it.
And
Yeah.
even, you know, what we have between now and the 9th for the text editing stuff, and then we'll have another 2 weeks to the public hearing. And then if there's really still mistakes, and I've been through this process before, you never catch all the mistakes, but then you know, I'll still have time before the document gets forwarded to the village board.
Right.
So I think all of these formatting issues, you know, and everything, my concern is there anything of substance that we missed or we want to go back and tweak and change?
I mean, don't we have to have this formalized before the public hearing?
We have to have we should have a document ready for inspection, but, I mean,
Right.
it will
It's a
be
draft.
essentially, it will be
Okay.
essentially the same. I mean,
Right.
you know, the Scribner stuff, I mean, we don't have to have
Sure.
all that perfect. But the other option, you know, I've been thinking about this maybe too much, is I have 2 weeks, I could put together, and I was gonna do this anyway in paper format, but I could put together a PowerPoint that just kind of summarizes, you know, what we've done, not just with farm to residential, but what we've done. That, I know it's short notice, but that could be advertised as an open house or workshop. Hey, we're ready to present the, you know, that wouldn't necessarily be for public comment. Would really depend on how many people are here, but it'd be another opportunity to educate them, you know. And then, by the time that meeting rolled around, the 9th, these letters to the F to R people would have already been sent out, and, you know, we could advertise the workshop on it. So maybe we diffuse some of the suspicion or anger or outrage.
Just educate, just make people know.
Right,
what
it's
we're
another
doing.
opportunity
Yeah.
with the presentation to educate them.
I don't think you can add in that type of meeting and keep the same schedule that we talked about. It just doesn't, just looking at the calendar,
Right.
it doesn't seem to line up.
Yeah.
So, do you want to stay on stay on our original schedule and just say, okay, next meeting, we're just gonna finalize the draft, and then we go to the public hearing, and then
We
we can go
can.
from there.
I mean, I was intending at some point to
Yeah.
put together a PowerPoint, either for the public
And I think
hearing or
that's
the
good.
9th, or the
Or
village
you
board
have it
or
online,
something.
or
you
have it
know.
online, or link to it online through
Yeah.
the village website.
Yeah,
so
I
that
thought, you know,
people-
that's another thing,
So the
but,
village could
you
then,
know.
the village people that could just go to the website, and then they could see and educate themselves on the village website.
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't necessarily, good point, we don't necessarily have to advertise as open house, but, you know, we just haven't had a lot of public participation here, which kind of, in a way, it's a relief. Secondly, as we get down to the wire, I get kind of worried about it, you know, because people are gonna wake up and say, oh my God, they're redoing the zoning ordinance, I mean, I didn't know anything. People always say they don't know anything about it, you know, no matter how much you do. So, you know, okay, maybe we just kind of take a half thing, I do a PowerPoint, have it ready for the night, it goes up on the website. We could mention, and there's gonna be a letter that accompanies the public notice, we could mention it in there. Say, hey, there is a public meeting prior to the public hearing.
Well, we are, Community Counts, the newsletter that goes out every week.
Oh, you do? Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. So I didn't realize it went out every week.
Is
Not,
there-
not everybody's subscribed, but I think most people are.
So personally, I think I would kind of like, if it's feasible from staff's point of view, because I don't want to just, you know, give you something that's not,
Yeah.
unattainable goal, but I think I'd like to stay on the current schedule that we have right now
With the public hearing on the 23rd.
of October,
Right.
yes.
So,
That'd be my.
good, and I think it's, from staff perspective, it's doable. Question: what's the venue for the public hearing?
Bear plan on Lord Alive.
Probably. See, we'll have to find it.
Well, no, you know, if you have a couple hundred people, where are you gonna do it if you have a couple hundred people? Especially since you're notifying, you know, the letter,
Yeah,
500 households potentially, or three, what, you know,
yeah, 350,
350,
whatever.
Yeah.
Or the basement over at the Fox
And
Hill
then,
Church.
and then the other
Yeah.
little note about it is they're mentioning Barb.
Let's start there.
It's better, it's close.
Yeah.
If you're
Start there.
changing zoning, do you have to put signs up in front of all those?
I've asked that now.
And
Yeah,
then
no.
you don't, and you don't have to notify people that are so many feet away from where the zoning's changing. Interesting.
Yeah, this is kind of a blanket rezoning, and
It just
their
didn't make
neighbors are
sense.
all gonna get letters, because they live in the same subdivision, they're gonna get the same
Right,
letter.
right,
I mean,
right.
it's, for the most part,
No, I know what you mean. No, I just envisioned it.
If it were proceeding as a map amendment for one particular parcel, like that would come before the ZBA or plan commission,
Okay.
then yes, but because it's being done under the statutory constriction of a zoning commission and a redo of the zoning map and ordinance.
right.
then no.
That makes, that's what I thought.
Right.
Okay. All right, so that's the schedule. You think, staff says they're fairly attainable, we'll give it a try. All right, I think it's doable, and we'll just need either the church in Fox Mill, they're probably
That
might,
might be easier to go to.
yeah.
Yeah, can
I would try.
someone, I mean, I'll be back in the office next week, but I need to have that on the notices, so
Yeah.
is there someone who can sort that out? I mean, I don't,
Yeah, I think James Levan was going to call, I think Mark asked him to call. I guess he knows the contact over. at the
right,
Fox
or give
Hill
me the
Church.
contact and I can try and
Yeah.
arrange, but I don't know who to
We'll get
contact.
that done.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but I need to know, I mean, these letters need to go out early next week ideally. And we have a couple weeks, but I don't wanna wait till, date
Right.
15 days before.
No, yeah,
I think the one thing you have to keep in mind, I know you're planning to have the, like a PowerPoint for the 9th, and if you do have public that attends and makes comment, any significant changes that you need to make as a result of that would have to be done before the 23rd. Because once the notices are sent out, everything's mailed, it's published, I mean, you could change the date, but you have to redo all of that again. So you really
Right.
can't,
Yeah.
I don't want to say you really can't change, you can't change the date of that public hearing after it's already scheduled.
Yeah.
It would have to occur unless you absolutely canceled it, which is really not in good form, and then scheduled it for another date certain. So if you're going to stick with that date, I would suggest you
sure.
make sure that you're going to stick with it now before Jim sends out those notices.
That's why I wanted to have a good discussion on
Yeah.
this. Are we ready to
And I just wanna
plow
make
ahead?
sure
Then fine.
if staff is comfortable with it, because I think
Just won't sleep
us
between now
as
and.
commissioners are comfortable with it, but if you're doing the legwork and
Right.
trying to put all that stuff together, if it's unfeasible, then you need to let us know.
You know, it's,
The only thing that I think about is, we've worked on this for most of the year, I think, right?
yeah.
I don't want to rush it at the end because it gives the appearance that we're trying to cram something in. And we had the electrical, the electric service, a lot of people feel that the village overstepped on the contract with MC Square.
Aggregation.
Yeah. And it's just the timing of hearing those complaints with the timing of this. If we're gonna have, I'm gonna call it an educational meeting, maybe a lot of input comes into play that does have us make some changes, and maybe we're better off having the education meeting and delaying the public hearing to the second Wednesday in November, or whatever date we had on there.
Oh, so reconsidering now, okay.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused. What is going to go on at the public hearing? I mean, do Do we do a PowerPoint presentation which summarizes?
I think there would be some type of introduction or
Okay.
presentation that can be, 10 minutes, can be
Right.
45 minutes, whatever.
Right.
But a brief summary of, why this commission was established.
Right.
What we've been doing, bullet points on significant things that we've changed, what we've left alone. And then it's open to public comment. And again,
Okay.
that presentation, that can be 5 minutes or 45,
What we can't do is read the ordinance.
No, we aren't gonna
No.
do that.
No.
No.
Now, if there's some information at the hearing that's brought to the commission's attention that would result in, say, some minor change to the draft, then you can agree on that, and then that, let's say revised draft, even if it's just a few words here or there, that's what would be presented to the village board.
Well, now,
So-
if I recall, in all honesty, now, we were in the midst of COVID, number one, so we were Zooming everything. But we put together, the steering committee put together the draft, that went then to the commission. They went through it all, and I'm trying to remember if that was done publicly then, so people could Zoom in and watch those meetings. And then after that, you had the public hearings, and I can't remember if we had one or two public hearings. But in other words, there's a lot of discussion coming from the public regardless. And so trying to incorporate all that in, now, if you're just gonna highlight, okay, everything else stays the same, however, we've changed this page and this page and this page, if it's like 25 pages, let's
Yeah.
say. If you just highlighted those and say everything else will stay the same, then maybe you can shorten it down, I don't know.
Yeah. I saw a presentation for a public hearing that Camiros presented. It was pretty short and really an overview. I don't know if it was the only one they gave, or maybe they modified it and did, but it was only, 24 slides. And it was a very, the 40,000 foot view of it. It wasn't really down in the weeds.
Right.
So, again, and I think there were 2 dates for the hearings. I think I've seen that.
Yeah.
So,
Officially, public hearing October 23rd, correct?
Yeah.
that's what it looks like. I
I don't know, you were, you have some
I
doubts.
think that's it's a concern, because we're almost at the end. I agree with that, but trying to get everything cleaned up in time, I'd want to have the education meeting before the public hearing.
If we're
because-
gonna have one, that was just an option. It's
No, I
not-
understand, but I think it's something, it's a great idea, because a lot of times people have a different viewpoint than what we looked at, or they have some great ideas, or we missed something completely. I just think that's a very good idea, but I think it needs to take place before the public hearing. That's just my opinion.
I would agree.
I think you may want to think of the public hearing as the opportunity for the public's input. So and the public hearing is not always a one and done venture. It can be adjourned and then renoticed for another day. Not renoticed where publication and all of that goes out, but it can be adjourned and then recommence on another day. So that's the time for the public to chime in. I mean, all of these meetings you've had are public meetings. They're open to the public. They're published here at Village Hall. They're on the village's community counts. They're on the website. So everything is open. If there are changes that are suggested by the public that you hear at the first meeting, and I say first because it's just the first one that's occurring, and you decide you want to make changes, you can come back for a second hearing and review those changes with the public. So I understand the desire to get more public input, but that's the purpose of the hearing. And if you have 20 people that show up and you decide not to change anything, or even if you do, and then you all have a consensus and direct Jim, and then, you show it's just a very minor change, that's what would be then sent to the village board. If it's a significant change, then if you want to come back for a second time, you can. but, and, you know, if you are comfortable with the draft that you have here, whether it's tonight or, you know, after looking at it for another week or so, I think you should address public comment at the meeting.
So is that part of the legal requirement to have a public hearing?
Yes.
It's
You have to
also
have a
part of the requirement to have, public comment?
Well, at any public meeting, you have to have public comment.
Okay.
So,
I mean,
Right.
it's part of it, so
Right,
I'm,
right.
maybe we can advertise it that way, that
Yep.
there'll be ample time. The only thing I would tell you is then, I wouldn't wanna limit comments to 3 minutes.
no, and that's, you know, the chair of any committee, commission has the discretion to how they want to set public comment. You know, I'd probably agree to something reasonable before the
Yeah.
meeting starts, that, you know, you can all discuss or
You know, we didn't
beforehand,
have-
but,
We didn't have too much problem with that. People were pretty good about, you know, keeping their comments to the point and not repeating what others were saying.
Right.
They might say, I agree with, you know,
Sure.
so-and-so.
Right.
And such. And there were only a couple people that really sort of went beyond their time. And we listened and said, well, you know, and then at some points, thank you very much. And largely, we were just taking comments. We were not necessarily responding to anything.
yeah, and you should, yeah.
And all of that too, because that was the
Yeah.
time for them to speak up. We already had our presentation, our putting this draft together is your comments as a commission.
Right.
And also, that's where
Right.
the public hearing largely. comes
Yeah, I
into
mean,
play.
the statutory requirements are, you know, your commission was formed, you review what you need to review, and a tentative report, and the ordinance is prepared, draft ordinance is prepared. And then all that needs to be, there's no specific requirement as to what has to happen at the hearing as far as, you know, what's presented to the public. It's just a chance for them to understand what's in the report, or I'm sorry, in the ordinance that's been prepared, and for them to be able to
Yeah.
provide
So-
input.
Yeah, so just a note, so let's say we hold the public hearing on whatever date, October 23rd. Everyone is given an opportunity to speak. Let's say we have 60 speakers, and it goes on late. We then, as a commission, have the option, you know, depending on what we heard, do we want to discuss this now? Maybe it's very minor comments, and we discuss it, and we tweak something, say, okay, we'll change this in the ordinance, and then we're done, and we vote to make a recommendation with those changes, with those minor changes, and then we're done on October 23rd. Or we hear a lot of public comment, and we decide we need an additional meeting to come back, not a hearing, but we have an additional meeting, we come back. Okay, let's go over the record, what did we hear, do we want to change anything? We do it November 7th, or whatever that date is, and then we're satisfied November 7th, and then we have the vote on the recommendation of the village board.
Right, I mean, Jim's absolutely right. You don't have to, if you want to make changes after you have the public hearing, you don't have to continue the public hearing to another day. You can have another meeting, like we're having
Yeah.
now.
Or
You wouldn't
we
adjourn-
could
you
just
wouldn't
wrap it
adjourn the
up. or-
public hearing, you'd actually close the public
You'd
hearing.
close the public hearing.
close it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable with, and
Everybody's
honestly, if you, you know, unless you have some reason why not everyone could come, like, you know, power went out, or there's a natural disaster or something, if you're having the public hearing, and everyone who's present has enough time to speak, and everyone, there are no further comments, you really can close the public hearing.
Can they send in comments or questions before the public hearing?
Yeah, and that will go out in the notice that in lieu of attending the hearings, they can forward comments that will be read into the record, that they'll
Okay.
come to me and.
And then,
we-
Bart, why do you think that the venue should be changed?
From here,
I-
from this?
Yeah.
I
I'd
think
recommend it.
The size of
Pardon me?
it,
I would recommend it because it's a public hearing, just like a zoning hearing, you
don't wanna postpone it.
want to, well, you don't want to have to postpone it because there's not enough room. And everyone who, when it's a public hearing, everyone who wants to have the right to speak should be given the right to speak, and should also be given, has to be given the right to hear or see the hearing live or on a recording.
Okay.
So, you have some of these hearings, I think when they had the most recent hearing in St. Charles, you had overflow rooms
Yep.
with TVs or projectors or things like that. the village doesn't have that here, and we probably wouldn't even have that at the church, so if you have a very large room, I'd recommend it.
Okay.
Just,
And
No,
how-
better be
how many
safe than
does that-
sorry.
How many does that fit?
Actually, I don't know.
I mean, we had probably, I think we estimate around 300 people at that.
Well, that's
It was
wonderful.
like a big open foyer
Yeah,
area.
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
It's pretty
You
big
know,
one
and-
here.
Well, the
300.
one at Lord of Light. Now, I don't
Yeah.
know about,
The-
I mean, this
the
one's
Fox
pretty
Mill,
big too.
the church in Fox Mill.
Fox Mill I thought was just easier to find.
And it's pretty, I mean, it's a big gymnasium type
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
Is there audiovisual equipment?
We
Is-
had plan commission meetings and, we had public hearings in there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The only thing would be to, record it, somehow record it. I mean, it should be fairly simple, just but somehow to set up a recording, since
Yeah.
obviously this won't be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a way to make sure it's recorded.
Yeah,
Screen,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we can
Yeah.
do that. We can do
Okay.
that.
All right, so let's stick to that plan, all right? And then, I appreciate the concerns. It's like, we've talked about, this was the first day we talked about this, we've talked about this.
No, but like I said, the 400-plus parcels just gave me a little bit of
Right.
pause, and I just want to ensure, and I wanted to bring this up, and I want to have a discussion, not that, oh, Jim, why didn't you tell us you sent out 400 letters, and we got this big angry crowd here, you know? and maybe one-
Hopefully it won't be angry, hopefully it'll just be people.
No, I
will
just-
be,
Here's,
understanding
but
what's going
here's,
on.
what we're gonna hear at the public hearing, there's not gonna be agreement, we're gonna hear, just like we had some public comment on animals, for and against tightening and loosening the regulations, I mean, and we're gonna have that for a lot of things. The good news, I think, for most people is, in many aspects, this draft is a lot more permissive in several areas than the current, the 2023 ordinance, in the keeping of animals and accessory structures, accessory dwelling units. Accessory dwelling units might be a lot of for or against, but, as I mentioned before, I mean, if we're satisfied with our draft and we hear the public comment and we have a brief discussion afterward and decide not to change everything and we're ready, then, we'll have an agenda item to vote to recommend approval to the village board. That will
Okay.
be on the public hearing.
Okay.
And we can either table that or,
If-
whatever, continue the hearing.
If you make significant changes, do you need to hold a subsequent public hearing on those changes?
No, I think if we
We close the hearing, we just have another meeting.
close the hearing and, I think if there's, again, if the discussion is in public, I think that would suffice. You wouldn't need a whole nother hearing
Don't think I do
on changes.
extend.
So I've been to a number of public hearings, and it's to take testimony and evidence, and not necessarily have a public discussion.
Right.
So I just wanna, I don't know.
Right, yep.
Yeah.
We just,
Focus
you listen,
in on-
we listen. We as a commission will listen to their input.
Yeah, I was referring to more post we close the hearing, there's gonna be discussion, then we decide.
Correct, after we
Right,
close the
right,
hearing.
so it's after the hearing closes, we have a
Then we
discussion, and then
discuss.
we decide, do we want to make changes based on the testimony? Do we want to make a recommendation to the village board tonight? Do we want to think about this and come back in November? I mean, so there's several
Yeah,
options.
I think that's why we had two meetings.
Yeah.
Because we went, it was going late, number one, a lot of people making comments, and then the second one, I think we maybe still took some comments, but then we had our meeting, and, then voted recommendations.
Well, if there's not a lot of comments, I can see doing that.
Right.
If there is a
But
lot of comments.
Then I could see, just, then having another meeting.
Right.
And that's why we've got the one in November tentatively scheduled, so. All right, I think that's a pretty good plan. Any other comments before I close the meeting? Any other concerns or, okay? All right, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have-
Second?
And second by Mr. Kopic. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. We're adjourned till the next regularly scheduled meeting in October.
Right.
Thank you. for-
8:30